Thank you, John, and thank you, Bill, for the opportunity to get up and talk a bit about Nuffield International. But as we all know, you should never give a Nuffield scholar a microphone, and particularly doing a job like this. I've got a cliche that I used to have the best job in Australia, and now I have the best job in the world, because I get to make up every morning with the people that you've actually seen presenting here today, and the people that talked about the Global Focus Program. I'm enthused. I've grown professionally through the experience, so I really have the best job in the world. So thanks, Bill, and thank you, John. And look, I think from my perspective, I look back on the growth of Nuffield Island, and I'm really encouraged. It's interesting. I think one of the key points that's or key catalysts, I think, to the change is when you made that decision for all of your scholars to participate in the Global Focus Program. I think up until then, we did have Irish scholars participating, but it was on an ad hoc basis. But to be able to raise the funding to actually have scholars participate has added an enormous amount to that Global Focus Program. And to give you an indication, in 2017 there will be 6 Global Focus Programs. We'll have Australians, New Zealanders, we'll have Irish, and the UK now will have a scholar on every tour. And we'll have some ad hoc, I think we'll have Dutch on every one of those programs as well. The Dutch have actually selected, I think, 6 scholars this year. So you can get a sense of what's happening. And this has really changed in the last 4 or 5 years. So Bill, I think what the Board of Trustees has done on Ireland is fantastic. Just add that greater diversity to those groups that are travelling. And we've heard a bit about it today. Michael Hoey talked a bit, and he made mention of this morning, the fact that Nuffield Island is in good hands, or Nuffield, should say Irish agriculture is in good hand. And certainly I had the opportunity to meet all of the 2017 scholars last night, and of course heard the 2015 present, and of course the 2016. So I've been reasonably close to the 2015 and 16 scholars through the organisation of the Global Focus Program, and the quality of people coming through, I think, stands Irish agriculture in great stead going into the future. So I can only support those comments that Michael made. And I can assure you another comment he made was that Nuffield scholars need to be going out and prosecuting the case for Irish agriculture. And I can assure you they do that very, very well, particularly at the bar after 5 o'clock. But certainly it's interesting. Just from a personal perspective, Irish agriculture now, from what, I know a bit about it, and it is very, very well prosecuted. You do have a great reputation around the world, so something you should be really proud of. And there's no doubt that Nuffield's played a role there. So just a bit, John's asked me to talk a bit about the role of Nuffield International and as well our activities. I thought I might just take a little bit of a backward step and just give you some sort of an indication of where it's come from. And I don't know if there's anyone, well, I'm sure there's no one in the room actually that was at the first triennial in 1980 in Australia. Obviously since then we've had a number of them. There's some key watershed times. I think the real key in terms of the evolving of Nuffield International was in 2008. In fact, it was in Ireland that the chairmanship of Nuffield International moved to Australia. Australia was going to host it in 2011, and Peter Nixon was elected the chairman of Nuffield International. Up until that stage, it wasn't an onerous task, as Campbell would testify. It was very, very much, I think, a matter of actually being turning up every 3 years and doing the job. But certainly from a secretariat point of view, it was just had to write the minutes up. So Peter took the role of Nuffield International, and I actually accompanied him on that, and so I acted as his secretariat for the next 3 years. But I want to really make a point that Peter Nixon's name in terms of Nuffield International should be recorded. He worked assiduously for the next 3 years, between 2008 and 2011, to an enormous amount of time, and certainly at his own financial cost in some cases as well, to actually pull together an agreement and a set of rules that the 6 then participating countries could work by. And the reason that was important was because in 2006, the first Contemporary Scholars Conference was actually came together in Utrecht in the Netherlands. It was the first time that all of the Nuffield scholars had been selected around the world, came together all in one place. It was an interesting genesis, but it was, and Campbell was at that on the first day, and John Stones, who was the director of UK Nuffield, was there. And I can remember when we broke for the first morning, and we really didn't know whether this experiment would work or not. But I can tell you, we broke the coffee, and John Stones and I were talking out in the corner, and literally could hardly hear yourself from that buzz that was around the room. I'm quite sure Campbell would testify that was, and I think I intuitively knew then this absolutely was going to work. And you get a bit of a sense of it when you go out here, of course, in afternoon tea. So what it meant, this CSC, now that we were actually getting together once a year, well, certainly Nuffield scholars were, but Peter as well, in 2010, made a decision that we would actually hold the CSC in the United States. It was the first time we really had moved outside a Nuffield country. And he actually had an ulterior motive, because what he wanted to do, he thought it might have been attractive to actually get most of the chairman and the directors to come along to that. And it worked well. So in fact, we did get, I think, every chairman, 6 chairmen and the 6 directors of each of the countries to there. And that was where he really started to introduce this concept of actually working together, working an agreement and getting a set of rules to work together. Got some common ground, some agreement there. Then in 2011 in Australia, we formally signed off on that agreement and set of rules. And that's really been, to me, has been the jump start, if you like, to where Nuffield International is today, and hopefully where it'll go to in the future. And I think, certainly in 2014 in Canada, we had the triennial there. And again, the board now met. So the board of Nuffield International, we had this, could meet once a year at the CSC, so we were getting progress each year. And in 2014, the board made the decision that Nuffield International could actually go out and, if you like, if we could raise the funds, to be able to award a scholarship outside the 6 participating countries. Now, in fact, in 2014, the Netherlands came on board as well and made it 7 participating countries. So again, that was and just think of the work that Peter Nixon done. I mean, he really did do an enormous amount of work, and I just want to record that. I think Peter's the sort of guy that hides his light under a bushel. Not a lot of people would know the amount of work. I do. I work with him, and I can assure you we've done a tremendous amount of work to get us where we are. So we're in a position then in 2014 where we could go out and we can try and raise some funds, which we were able to do. So that first year, we were able to actually select a scholar to travel in 2015, so Cecilia Fiallo, young Brazilian woman who has just actually completed a scholarship. I think her report should be published in the next week or so. She presented at the Australian conference. Absolutely outstanding young woman. We had over 40 applications that year. Last year in 2016, again, we had, I think, 35 applications, and I was talking to Mike Brady outside. One of the women actually travelled for I think, something like 30 hours to get to the final selection in Sao Paulo, and missed out, would you believe? But 8 hours on a ferry ride, 2 bus trips and a plane trip. But Brazil, it's amazing the amount of enthusiasm, if you like, to really get a bit of a feel for global agriculture. So we've had 2 Nuffield International Scholars, both from Brazil. In 2017, next year, we've actually secured funding now for 4 scholars. And watch this space. So there will be certainly 4 scholars announced, subject to, of course, there being suitable candidates in early December this year. And they will join the Irish scholars and the other scholars travelling around the world in the global, the CSC and also the Global Focus Program. So I think I'm charged then, of course, to raise the funds for those 4 scholars we've got for next year, 6 the following year, and then 8 in 2019. At that stage, we should be self-funding by that point in time. In terms of funding, Nuffield Australia made the decision in the 2015-16 financial year that they would fund 50% of my remuneration to support Nuffield International. So in fact, I played a dual role of both secretary to both organisations, and then the UK as well then funded an equivalent amount of cash to Nuffield International as that Australia had in terms of supporting my remuneration, as well as some smaller contributions from New Zealand and Canada. And there is a scholar levy for each scholar that actually participates in the Contemporary Scholars Conference. Each of those scholarships are $60,000 US, a significant amount of money. And but I think we've taken the decision. I think it takes a lot of money to actually manage the program, the CSC and the Global Focus program, as well as the study. And of course, there's going to be a lot of sunk cost, a lot of overhead costs associated in those early years. So we've set the target pretty high. We've been able to achieve 4, our target for next year. And I'm pretty hopeful the amount of groundwork that we're doing that we'll be able to achieve those targets of 6 and 8 in the following 2 years. But so that actual funding stream is now will come from those scholarships. So the bursary for a Nuffield International Scholar will be 50% of the total cost, so $30,000 US. So we've got then $30,000 for each scholarship to help pay for some of the direct costs of those scholarship programs, as well as the overhead costs. We will be, in fact, announcing in the not too distant future a drive to build a foundation fund, and we'll be talking to individual alumni and also some companies that perhaps are not in a position to support a scholarship per se, but might be willing to put some dollars towards a foundation fund that we will use strategically to support the scholarship program. I'm also negotiating with Rabobank at this point in time for a global investment in this Nuffield International program, and I'm pretty confident we've actually set the date for signing off the MOU, so that'll be the 3rd of November in Australia. So that'll be, again, I think, a pretty significant move for Nuffield International. Just talk a little bit about our activity. So Nuffield International is charged, I suppose, with 3 key objectives. One is to oversight the triennial conference every 3 years. And can I, at this point in time, put in a plug for the triennial next year? It's in the UK, and and I can tell you, I was involved in organising the one in Australia in 2011. We thought we did a pretty good job, but I can assure you that Roger Mercer, who's the Nuffield International Chairman, but also chairing that triennial organising committee, has done an absolutely magnificent job. He's pulled together a great program, but the really exciting thing is he charged his committee with raising 50 subsidised spots for both the Global Focus Program scholars who will be travelling at that point of the year. So 3 of those Global Focus Programs groups next year will be in the UK at the triennial for the week, and that'll take probably 25 or 26 of those 50 spots. So for the scholars that have actually travelled in the last 4 or 5 years, put your hand up for some of these subsidised spots. We really do want to get some young scholars participating in that program. Really exciting initiative, and we want to make it a bit more than just a social event for some of our older scholars that are actually getting together. So really make it an interactive triennial. So really exciting stuff in the UK. 2020 will be in New Zealand. So Nuffield International doesn't have any real role except oversight of that. The other one oversight we have, of course, is the Contemporary Scholars Conference now, which is held each year. It's in Brazil next year in March. It's the 2nd time that it's held outside of Nuffield country after Washington that I spoke about earlier. So normally the host country, whether it be UK or Ireland or Australia, New Zealand, they will normally organise that with oversight from Nuffield International. But obviously the fact that we're down in Brazil and on Nuffield country, there is a significant amount of my management time, and of course we've got Sally Thompson down in Brazil, and I don't know if anyone knows Sally, but she's our ambassador in Brazil, and she's doing a fantastic job. So between Sally and myself, we'll organise that program down there, as well as all of our other stakeholders assisting. And of course I've talked about our other major responsibilities, the Nuffield International Scholarship Program. Now, the scholarship program, we've actually have a significant focus on Brazil, the USA and Africa. It doesn't preclude us talking to, and we're obviously talking to people in Japan, China, India, Southern Caucasus. So would you believe we've got a great contact over there, and talking about Georgia, Azerbaijan and Armenia. Who would have thought? But also Eastern Europe, Germany, Denmark as well. So if you like, the world's our oyster, and world domination is not too far away. But the key in South America is pretty obvious, and it's interesting looking at those three different continents and the different perspective each of them hold. In Brazil, certainly, and we're not precluding Chile. In fact, there's a scholarship available in Chile this year, Argentina, Paraguay as well, and Peru. But the Brazilians, as I said earlier, really want to get a global focus. They want to get a global focus about individually, and they just want to travel. They want to be involved with Nuffield. It's extraordinary the amount of interest we're seeing down there. You go to the US, and it's a little bit different. I think, and this is taking nothing away from the US farmers, but I can remember a Secretary of Agriculture in Pennsylvania said to me one day when I was extolling the reasons of why we wanted to go to the US, to give most of our scholars go through the US for a part of their study topic. We really wanted, Nuffield wanted to have American farmers involved, and Nuffield wanted to be in the US, and he said to me, Jim, American farmers need Nuffield more than Nuffield needs American farmers. And I think we can perhaps relate to that with some of our friends in the US. And it's going to be a difficult task, trying to convince an American farmer from Iowa, where it's corn, soybeans. Well, it's a 3-year rotation, they tell me. It's corn, soybeans, and Miami. And they trying to convince them that they should be actually going and spending 16 weeks overseas. We're getting some great traction. We've got some great networks over there, but we want to make it a bit more than this platonic relationship we have. We really want to deeply engage. So we've got American farmers travelling with these scholars that are travelling around the world in their global focus program. I think once we can start doing that, we really do add enormous significant value to our own scholars, as opposed to Brazil, where I see that the major benefit there, in fact, not a benefit to our scholars, but certainly a benefit to Brazil, and I think more of a benefit to Brazil than our scholars. Africa's an interesting one, and I just digress. I've just come back from Africa. We've been through Wayne Dredge and Kelvin Meadows. Kelvin Meadows is the Nuffield Canada chairman, incoming chairman for Nuffield International. He'll take over from Roger next June. How are we going for time, John? Okay, a couple of minutes. So we're in Kenya, Zimbabwe, Zambia, and South Africa. And I was amazed at the amount of traction we're getting and interest in the program. We actually, for some of you scholars, older scholars that may have travelled with Zim scholars back in the 1990s, 2000s, we actually convened a dinner, and I think we sent out a mass email about it, but with a photo. But we actually got together with, I think, 6 or 7 Zim scholars that are still living in Zimbabwe. The next day we met another one, and Trevor Gifford, most of you may know of. Trevor actually couldn't make it along; he was in Malawi, but they were absolutely over the moon. The fact that we were able to come down and meet them, have a meal with them, and everyone talked a bit about their experiences. And the extent that I've certainly charged myself with ensuring that we actually do that on an annual basis. And we all know what those farmers have gone through in Zimbabwe over the last number of years, but I think in a short time in the future there'll be a significant change in Zimbabwe, and we'd like to think that one way or another we might be able to get that program up and running there again. But watch this space. We actually had a really interesting selection panel actually in South Africa, and it's had a very positive outcome, subject to board approval. But I'm hoping we can make a really, really interesting announcement in the not too distant future. Just finally, finalising on John's comment about. We've built up a significant amount of IP over the last few years on global focus programs, contemporary scholars conferences, and the network we're building around the world. And so we tried to leverage off that by running a tour through China in 2015, and then which was very, very successful. And then another one in Brazil this year, which Michael Brady participated on, and he might be able to talk a bit about that. But we had planned on an East Africa tour in 2017. We've decided now that we're going to push that back a year, simply because we didn't want to clash with the triennial in the UK. Wanted to give them as much airspace as possible, so that there will be a 23-day tour through starting in Nairobi and then travelling through Tanzania, Mozambique, Malawi, back into Zimbabwe, and finishing off in Victoria Falls. It'll be tough. It'll be a global focus program on steroids, but you can be assured that it'll be a very, very interesting program. We also want to follow on as well as picking up on an IP by running some programs through India, and maybe some other companies of interest. John, I think that's about all the time to move, but thank you very, very much for the opportunity. And